The Silesian Blues Trail. Hello, and welcome to the next of our podcast. Today, my guest is Jan Gauwach. Hi, Jan. Jan said. Hi. Lecturer said. Janek graduated music school in Katowice. He's a violinist, a composer, arranger, multi-instrumentalist, artistic manager of the Silesian Root Blues, whose inventor is Wojtek Mirek. Jan, in the previous podcast, we talked quite a lot about your many collaborations. Now you mentioned Kasia Kowalska, but in your artistic career, for example, the acoustic travel team appeared. Jan said, yeah, that's Louise's syndrome, Konopko, with whom I played in the streets, but also in the clubs. Lecturer said, what about your cooperation with Martina Jakubowicz? Jan said, Martina was the first star with whom I started cooperation as a young boy. That's the way it's been going up until now. That if there were any recordings, I'll always meet you there in the studio. Lecturer said, so following your discography is a really big one. Which cooperation do you remember best? Maybe not so good, but that was for you, the most significant. She had the biggest impact on you. Jan said, how do you record records with someone or play? Concert means that you are in the back, a good experienced musician that they just call you to play or record a disc. So I don't know if I can say that it's a significant, albeit perhaps more satisfying dream. You know, as a young child you listen to some bands and suddenly with these bands you play a record. Lecturer said, like who, for example? Jan said, to perform with Jam at their 35th anniversary and listening to them as a 4-year-old, this is a dream come true. You play with the team that you bring up, and in reality you are suddenly invited, or you are invited there in my case, on a joint Jubilee concert. This is significant, at least for me, and the concert with Martina or Sebastian, for me is like a dream come true. There was also a performance with SBB in their original lineup, or with Jurek Piotrowski, concerts with Jan Szkiek, Leszek Winder, or with Janek Błędowski, with whom we managed to play with as part of the trail last year for the first time. Since we've known each other, and we've known each other for around 20 years in person, I knew Bush as a kid too. We played 2 violins, one whole concert. Lecturer said, cooperation with cooperation, but you also started your own band, and you spent your first live album in studio. But also later you founded in 2017 Jan Gauwach band. Jan said, no, Oswe is a separate project. Then I made my band as Jan Gauwach band. In 2010 I started folding because I was recording his first album Jan Gauwach and Friends. In 2011 the band Jan Gauwach band started its activity. In the meantime we managed to release this album, and in 2017 we released as Jan Gauwach band. It's just a record, because earlier it was Jan Gauwach and Friends, i.e. some of the people who played with me then in the band. She was also my guests on the first album. Lecturer said, do you perform as Jan Gauwach band? Jan said, yeah, we do. Lecturer said, and when it comes to Leśniczówka, how do you start your story, your cooperation? Jan said, my brother Wojtek led me to Rangers Station when I was 10, to a concert I think, in the Jace the Screamer. I remember that because when we went there on a motorcycle, he got an antique motorcycle with a sidecar, with the basket. I remember that. It was cold, because I think it was November. I was ashamed to go into the woods, because I knew that if I went in there, he would also know Yassi and Leszek were there, and everyone will want it. Introduce me, that the younger brother, that violin, something, so that the whole concert I sat in the trash outside. It was cold as hell. Bouncer, who still works in Leśniczówka. He was watching me to see if I was still sitting there. That's what it looked like. Only a year or 2 later, Wojtek and I went to Leśniczówka again. Lecturer said, did you stay long enough? Jan said, I was already there, because Leszek Winder and Mirek, to help, they started to do workshops in Leśniczówka, and I started going to them. Lecturer said, and the workshops were about what exactly? Jan said, music, acting, they were getting together. It was also a combined jam session. So you could play, you could talk to each other. Mirek is a very auscultated musician when it comes to creativity of various artists, and he can also translate very nicely. It helped me a little bit in that I could search for more by yourself artists. Going there, I ran into my genius idea that I'm going to do my own concert. But I've already played with Luis on the streets, so now it looks a little different. I had a little bit more experience, how it could be arranged. I remember the first concert I organized, inviting Altka, such a harmonious player from Wrocław, which for me at first, as I had 15 or 16 years old, he invited me to play with him in Wrocław. And so I began to travel between Wrocław and Katowice. When I was 17, it was, 17, lecturer said. Years go by, and that was the first one, a Christmas concert. That is 2002. Jan said, yes, the first one in 2001, lecturer said. And since 2001, every year a Christmas concert is taking place in Leśniczówka. Jan said, earlier, when he was 26, Altek was working on drove trams. On the second day of Christmas, he could have had the day off, but on the 27th, it was no longer an option. Well, I did that concert first, 26, inviting him, Jurek Kawalc, Leszek Winder, to play with me. I made some flyers and I ran around the city with leaflets that he's like this concert that will be entry for free and to come and play. And then to Leśniczówka, I couldn't get in anymore. People were bouncing me back. The club was bursting at the seams, and I said, well, if it goes, maybe next year again. And every year he bursts at the seams. Lecturer said, tell me if you have experience in organizing annual Christmas concerts or influences the organization of the concert along the Silesian Blue Trail. Jan said, these are two different concerts and actually two different ranks of concerts. It's a very big concert, and the one in Leśniczówka, there's a little gig. It attracts a lot of people, but it's an organization in the club where I have 2 to 3 teams, including one of mine. That's a question, a few phone calls. And here, however, this is a lot of phones. These are trials. This is a lot of paperwork that has already, Wojtek gets it. I have to take over the musicians. You have to sit by the arrangements. They get songs from us. You know, here are some examples of the songs. They sound like this. I'm not a fan of one-to-one performed songs, so something needs to be changed. We need to sit on this, lecturer said. Which concert of these previous ones that you organized was the hardest for you? In what years? Jan said, everyone is difficult, because these are different ideas. We played the claps and tributes, lecturer said. Exactly. Are you the initiator of these ideas? Jan said, no. Most of it Wojtek makes up, and he would want to do that. And then I sit on it, so that our boss was happy. Probably the hardest part about it, everything was the first trail because we had a lot of musicians with Silesia. Those who created the Silesian Blues, they haven't seen each other in 30 years. Some, such as Andrzej Żyska and Jurek Piotrowski, you also had to, not quite so forcibly force them to play other songs than their own. However, everyone is used to playing their own songs and suddenly have to learn how to do that. You have to play in something else. You have to perform in something they didn't hear you in. This concert probably had the most visitors because someone else was coming in all the time. We have practically invited all these eaters, our legends who started something. Suddenly we were accumulated in one place. So we took mega of it, watch, and keeping everyone to be prepared, lecturer said. And those of you who didn't have an opportunity to visit Leśniczówka, we cordially invite you to a concert festival, which will take place on December 27th at 8 p.m. And I invite all of our listeners to download the trail app, Silesian Blues. Thanks to the application, you will get to know more than one place. Thanks to the application, you will get to know more than one place. In this, I will tell you where it starts. For example, the Jam Band. This project is funded by government budgets. The podcasts have been read by Braden Buddy.